So the full faith and credit of this country, where the hell is it? And then you talk about the petrodollar, which is the other part of it, where we signed an executive order telling Saudi Arabia we're going green 50% by 2030, 80% by 2050. And what has Saudi Arabia done? Well, they and every other country in OPEC has joined the Belt Road Initiative, the largest infrastructure project the world has ever seen, currently representing 75% of humanity and 50% of global GDP. They have formally been admitted last week, 2 weeks ago, to the BRICS. They have applied to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the largest regional military and financial organization in the world, who, by the way, has formally accepted Iran into it, as did the BRICS. Interesting right there. They've applied to the BRICS New Development Bank, and they told everyone in Davos they'd be open to taking other currencies for oil.
Think. Act. And prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Money Level Show. Here we think, act, and prosper, and this channel focuses on changing financial trajectories and building legacies. Today we have part 2 of our interview with Andy Schectman, who is the CEO of Miles Franklin. Andy got started as a financial planner and he focused on Swiss franc investments. In the second part of the interview, Andy goes in depth about the BRICS nations and how this presents a risk to the United States. So please hit the subscribe button and the like button so this video can be pushed out to many other people who need to hear this message. So buckle up your seatbelts and hang on for the ride as Andy goes into depth about the BRICS nations and shares some important information that we should consider moving forward. So let's get to it.
And there's an old saying, Daryl, that he who has the gold makes the rules. So keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, I remember that saying. That's what that saying is what got me buying, gold and silver and such, because whoever has it, I mean, it's real money, and we're currently on this fiat currency paper standard that's backed by faith, and once that faith collapses, then all mayhem.
I'd like to chime in on that for 1 second. By the way, just so you know, gold prices in China and Japan both hit, which are the second and the third largest economies of the world, hit fresh all-time new highs on Monday for gold. So it's the dollar strength that makes the price of gold seem underperforming. It's at all-time highs in China and Japan, the second and third largest economies in the world. Now, you're right. The full faith and credit of the U.S. government, right? That's a saying. I'll get to the faith part in a minute. But the credit part, we have, by the government's own admission, Google it, you'll see this, we have 155 trillion in debt. 32 on balance sheet, that's accounted for. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and government military pensions exceed the other 130 plus some other things. We are 155 trillion in debt. A trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. We're 155 trillion in debt. So take 31,688 and multiply it times 155. That's how many years ago our debt would be in seconds. I don't think the earth was created back then. And the sickening part, let's talk about the credit. They say they have 5 trillion in assets backed against 155 trillion in debt. We are a banana republic by all measurements. We have 125% debt to GDP ratio. Of course, we don't jail our political rivalries like other banana republics do. Well, maybe that will change. I don't know. I'm just saying. But we're broke. We're insolvent. We are a banana republic by classic definition. And how about the faith? I mean, you can say what you want about the way things have changed in this country, where the divisiveness has broken up the unity in this country, where everyone is at each other's throats, where you're defined by who you voted for. But remember, this is a country where people walked from Central America through 100-degree plus heat for days to get to a better life, or tied rafts together from Cuba and sailed across a choppy sea to find liberty and justice and equality and fairness, leaving totalitarian regimes. And when you see a weaponizing of the Justice Department and the FBI, and whether or not this is not a political statement, okay, I'm a patriot. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. They both stink. And when you talk about a country where no matter how you feel about Trump or how you feel about Biden, to actually look in the mirror or look someone in the eye and say, yeah, I think that the law is being applied equally, you're lying. And I think most people would deep down agree with that it's not being applied equally. The scales of justice are tilted in one direction over another. And that's what Lady Liberty is holding, the scales of justice. The faith of this country that is so torn apart with transgenderism and cancel culture and censorship, where people are just so angry and aren't able to listen to a divergent viewpoint respectfully. You never learn. You just pigeonhole yourself. You learn more and more about less and less till you know everything about nothing. So the full faith and credit of this country, well, where the hell is it? And then you talk about the petrodollar, which is the other part of it, where we signed an executive order telling Saudi Arabia we're going green 50% by 2030, 80% by 2050. And what has Saudi Arabia done? Well, they and every other country in OPEC has joined the Belt Road Initiative, the largest infrastructure project the world has ever seen, currently representing 75% of humanity and 50% of global GDP. They have formally been admitted last week, 2 weeks ago, to the BRICS. They have applied to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the largest regional military and financial organization in the world, who, by the way, has formally accepted Iran into it, as did the BRICS. Interesting right there. They've applied to the BRICS New Development Bank, and they told everyone in Davos they'd be open to taking other currencies for oil. I would argue the petrodollar is done with. They are being protected by two of the three largest nuclear arsenals in the world, and they are already selling their oil to China for yuan, which is immediately convertible into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. The promise we got from Saudi Arabia in 1974 is we'll protect you, and for that protection, you will denominate oil globally in US dollars and then take those proceeds and invest them back in US treasuries. Well, they're at the lowest level of treasury holdings in 6 years. They've been selling them. They're striking deals with countries to sell their oil for other currencies. They're in these organizations that taken together represent the majority of human population. And guess what? We're going green. We don't need them anyway. So when you talk about our attempts at clinging to the world reserve status, the faith, the credit, the petrodollar, I mean, you can't make it up how stupid we are. And you know what's the most interesting thing about all of this? The number one economic advisor to the United States government right now, to the Biden administration, is a man named Jared Bernstein. Look him up. His whole thesis is to shed the world reserve standard. He wrote reports on it that were picked up in the New York Times and the Washington Post, one called Dethrone King Dollar, where he says the exorbitant privilege of being the world reserve is something we can no longer afford. So if you wanted to blow up the world reserve status, well, number one, you weaponize the dollar. You kick Russia out of SWIFT. You confiscate their Forex reserves, not just sanction, and you use them to rebuild the Ukraine. The second thing you do is you tell the linchpin of the dollar hegemony, hey, we're going green, but thanks anyway. And then watch them join this conglomerate of countries pushing back against the West. All of the oil-producing countries are joining this group, including all of them on the Belt Road. And then you break up the unity in this country. After World War II and the Great Depression, it was the unity, the togetherness, the nuclear family, the respect for one another, the respect for law and order that allowed this country to flourish, for all of us to live better than our parents and our grandparents did. It's coming to an end, in my opinion, because of all of the things that are the opposite of that. We're in bizarro world. If you were Rumpelstiltskin and you woke up after 50 years of slumber, you would wonder where the hell you are and what the hell is going on. And so when we talk about the full faith and credit and liberty and justice for all, remember when they used to say the Pledge of Allegiance? And this is not political. Just so happens that the Democrats are currently in office. The Republicans have screwed the pooch too. This is patriotism. This is This is just complete and total befuddlement. So yeah, things have never been so crazy. And this is why you own gold and silver, Daryl, not to get wealthy, but that it is wealth. It's wealth that's outlived everything the world's ever thrown at it. And in a world that seems to be off axis, spinning faster and faster and faster, out of control, I think it's never been more important.
Yeah, agreed. You loaded the boat on that one. It's a lot to chew on there. So one thing that I noticed, even with the BRICS nations, Egypt had joined, and Egypt controls the Suez Canal, which is like a big trade canal, where many people, I don't know if people remember when the Suez Canal was blocked by during the pandemic and such, and how that slowed up supply chains and such. So I mean, just the players that are joining the BRICS, like they have some control over real assets. I mean, when you're looking at oil, you're looking at gold, you're looking at trade, all these different things, and it seems like from our perspective of what we're doing, like we're not even doing anything really. I mean, we're being more self-destructive than anything. I mean, because we're not seeing any trade. We're not seeing any production coming on for our own resources. I mean, we're signing these small bills that for nuclear and such, but China's like building a huge amount of nuclear reactors right now compared to what we're building. And so it's like, how do we even get ourselves out of this hole? I mean, it seems like there's some other type of agenda here. And you mentioned Bernstein, wanting to end the reserve status, and having writings on that. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the break in action, but I want to tell you about the link in my description below. This is to the New Orleans Investment Conference. This conference has been around for years and have brought many people out, such as Milton Friedman, Gerald Ford, Alan Greenspan, and Margaret Thatcher. This conference is put on by Brian Lundeen and his team. Brian is the CEO of Gold Newsletter. This year, they're going to have speakers such as Jim Rickards, George Gammon, Peter Schiff, Rick Rule, Danielle DiMartino Booth, Lynn Alden, and many others. Now, I encourage you to click the link in the description below. You can choose to attend the live event, which I will likely be at, as well as the event that is live streamed. You can support the channel by using my link below, so I encourage you to check that out. Now, let's get back to the interview.
So, look, you're right. When you talk about what these countries represent, you have Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the UAE, which are massive oil producers, some of the biggest in the world. You have Argentina, which is a massive agricultural producer, but most people don't know they're also the largest natural gas producer in South America. You have Egypt, which you mentioned is, and I think the reason they were brought on in particular, I mean, they are a Western-friendly country by and large, but you're right, they control the Suez Canal, which is a huge issue. It's one of the biggest shipping routes in the world. And then, of course, you have Ethiopia, which is the fastest growing economy in Africa. So when you talk about January 1st, when these new countries become, official, you will talk about almost 50% of the world's population. You're talking about over 43, maybe almost 50% of the world's oil production. You're talking for 25% of all exported goods. You're talking 75% of the world's manganese, 50% of the globe's graphite, 28% of its nickel, 10% of its copper. The list goes on and on. 23 countries have already applied formally for BRICS 2, the next meeting where they're going to add more countries. 22, another, have expressed interest. That list will grow as we get closer to the next meeting. But you're right. What China is doing is we go in with coercion. They go in with cooperation. They've brokered a peace deal between Sunni and Shiite, Iran and Saudi Arabia. They hated each other for years, centuries. Now they're building embassies in each other's countries. They brokered a peace deal between Iran and Iraq, first ever railway between the two countries. They go into all of these countries and they build infrastructure, railways and bridges and maritime channels and oil refineries and gold and silver mines, and allow these countries to industrialize, and through cooperation and not through coercion. And that's a very, very big deal. Formally, I see that Algeria, Cuba, Indonesia, Palestine, and Vietnam have formally applied. Other notable countries expressing interest are Mexico and Venezuela. You got more oil, more silver, more commodities. Mexico right next to us. This is a big deal. And that's the problem. Our Western media isn't telling us what's going on, and they're not explaining just how significant this is. Now, this isn't going to be an all at once moment until it is. It's like, I call it logarithmic decay. That's a term that if you envision a waterfall, like Niagara Falls, well, we could be 40 miles upriver, don't even know what's coming. And you're just on a raft. And, every hour or so, it starts to pitch down a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. It's like the game Jenga, little by little, by little, by little, by little, by little, by little, and bang, all at once. But that's what's happening. And you can see that. I mean, you talk about these countries that don't like each other. Well, my enemy's enemy is my friend. Look at the new BRICS naval alliance. Iran, Iraq, India, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar. I mean, all of these countries that never got along are now alongside each other in a new naval alliance to patrol the Indian Ocean, to allow these trade routes amongst all these new individuals, and the Belt Road Initiative, the largest infrastructure project in human history, where China has gone in and industrialized and is continuing to attempt to industrialize all of these commodity-rich countries and settle outside the dollar. So little by little by little by little, then bang, all at once, you hit the falls. Well, don't know where that is, don't know where we are on the graph. But you can see that the dollar's supremacy is coming to an end. And we just marked the anniversary the other day of Russia and Saudi Arabia signing a joint military cooperation agreement right after we left Afghanistan in a very embarrassing way, with thousands of American citizens left behind enemy lines and all the freedom fighters back. There was no coincidence in the timing. They said, we're going to now sign a contract with Russia for protection. Well, it's been our protection of the Saudi kingdom that has given the dollar its hegemony. The fact that they signed that 1 year ago or 2 years ago now with Russia, the fact that they've joined the BRICS, the fact that they've applied to the largest regional military and financial organization in the world, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, they are being protected by two of the three largest nuclear arsenals in the world, plus India. I mean, at what point do people not realize that this is not like Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi, who tried to sell their oil for gold or euro or other currencies and ended up paying the price? This is a country that has found, or in a time where these countries have found safety in numbers, and it is growing by the day. And that's the little by little by little by little, then bang. Don't know when the bang comes, but if you don't see this rolling stone that is gathering moss and turning into a big boulder, then you're not paying attention.
Yeah, agreed. Just as we begin to wrap up, man, I appreciate you sharing all of that. I mean, this is just a wealth of information. So we recently had some videos go viral on YouTube regarding coin dealers' bank accounts being shut down. And this reminded me of like the whole CBDC thing and just the ability for someone to cut you off from access to the banking system and such, and also highlighted the importance of having real money outside of the system. Do you have any information on that, or as to why does that happen? I mean, you've been in the precious metal industry for a long time. I just don't know, why would a bank just shut you down if you're following all of the rules and things of that nature?
The only thing that comes to mind, I guess, is that the difference between a coin shop and a company like mine would probably be their level of anti-money laundering or know your client regulations. I'm just saying this off the top of my head. I don't know that to be true. Maybe they find it to be more risky, being that it's brick and mortar and they don't have proper security. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, to run a company the size of ours or any of the major metals companies, you spend a fortune in insurance and in security and in protocol, and it's a different business model, ours versus a local coin shop. But I will tell you that I think that in general, the banks don't like precious metals. They don't like the precious metals companies. I think that they improperly classify them. Even when you try to fill out an application for a bank account, I found it amusing. Recently, we did that, and there wasn't, what kind of business are you in? And when it would say finance, it would say stocks or bonds or insurance. There was nothing about, about physical precious metals. It's an industry that's misunderstood, and I think the coin shops probably represent a greater risk than their return warrants for some of these banks. And maybe I'm off base, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that would be my initial guess. Short of that, it's discouraging. Certainly, that is what the CBDC could do, and there are people out there who have said just that is a potential threat. What's his name? Martin Armstrong just talked about that. He came out and said that, when the CBDC comes out, if they don't want you to buy gold, they'll make it impossible for you to transact with a precious metals company, in essence, putting us out of business. Could it happen? I guess. Desperate companies do desperate things. They could say the same thing about alcohol and tobacco and marijuana and casinos. I mean, I guess your mind could go as far as you want it to. Are we becoming that kind of a country? And think about what we were saying earlier about the trust of this country, the beacon of light, the world reserve currency, the center of freedom and liberty. And who knows? But it's discouraging to see it. My heart goes out to them. I guess I haven't heard of it being an epidemic, but I've heard of a couple companies this has happened to, certainly. And maybe there's more to it than meets the eye in terms of their creditworthiness or the amount of loss that they've had, or the risk that the banks feel is not justified by keeping them as clients. I don't know, but it sucks nonetheless.
Yeah. One thing that the banks in the agreement, when you sign up for a bank account, they can shut your shut your account down for whatever reason they feel is justifiable. So yeah, that's definitely unfortunate. Well, Andy, thank you so much for coming on today. Where can people find out more about Miles Franklin, and also where can they find you at?
So info@milesfranklin.com if you have questions. Any questions that you have, or about this interview, or questions for me. If you want a more competitive price list, you'll find coins or items priced up to $10,000 on our website, milesfranklin.com. But if you are in one of the states where our tax software hasn't been updated yet into the brand new website, and it says call, because there are states like Florida where if you buy under $1,000 worth of silver, it's taxed. So we're updating that right now in all of the states where those kind of things apply. We do deliver to every state in America. So please feel free to either reach out to us at info@milesfranklin for an updated price list above and beyond the $10,000 price level on the website, which will be much more competitive, or any questions in general on precious metals IRAs, or any questions for me. And we would certainly be happy to promptly get back to you with no obligation, answer your questions, and do what we can to get you taken care of, whatever that may be. And in the subject line, put Daryl sent me, and we'll make sure that we take extra special care, since this is our first time on the show with you, and we want to make sure that we know where these people are coming from. So either milesfranklin.com or info@milesfranklin.com. Daryl sent me with any questions, and we will promptly get right back to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Andy. Appreciate you coming on. Let's do this again sometime.
I'd love to. Pleasure is mine, Daryl. You take it easy. Thanks for having me.